The conference room seemed deliberately designed to intimidate. Glass walls on one side displayed the Seattle skyline in all its rainy glory, while the other walls featured austere white surfaces adorned only with Tech Vantage's minimalist logo. The table a slab of polished mahogany that reflected the overcast sky felt like a barrier between myself and the two women seated across from me. Elena, after 15 years with Tech Vantage, we're restructuring your position. Vanessa Wright announced, her voice carrying a barely concealed note of satisfaction. The senior vice president of product management sat ramrod straight, her silver-streaked bob perfectly motionless as she delivered the news. Beside her, Pamela Chen from Human Resources maintained a practiced expression of corporate sympathy folder, neatly positioned before her like a shield. The company is moving in a new direction. Pamela added, manicured fingers sliding a manila folder across the table's glossy surface. Your contributions have been valuable, but we're consolidating the research division under the product development team. I accepted the folder without opening it, feeling its weight, literal and metaphorical, in my hands. Inside would be the standard severance package, 2 weeks' pay for every year of service, continued health coverage for 3 months, and a list of career counseling resources I would never use. The folder contained the corporate version of a sympathy card expressing regrets for the death of a 15-year career. I completely understand. I replied, my voice steady despite the thunder of my heartbeat. These decisions are never easy. Relief flashed across their faces. They'd clearly expected tears, protests, or anger, the typical responses, when informing a 55-year-old woman she was being pushed out of the tech industry, where youth was prized above experience. What they didn't know was that I had anticipated this moment for weeks, ever since a misdirected email thread had appeared in my inbox last month. The message had been brutally clear. Re-Q3 restructuring, research division leadership. Transition plan for E-Reyes in place. JB approved severance terms. Younger profile identified for revised role, pending final interviews. We'd like you to clean out your desk by Friday. Vanessa continued gaining confidence from my apparent acceptance. Her French manicured hands clasped together on the table wedding ring, catching the fluorescent light. We'll need your keycard company, laptop and phone. Before you leave, your team will be notified this afternoon. My team's 6 brilliant engineers I had personally recruited and mentored over the years. The same team that had helped me develop the distributed processing algorithm that now powered Tech Vantage's flagship product, AccountSphere accounting software, used by over 40% of Fortune 500 companies. The same team that would now report to someone decades younger with a fraction of our collective experience. Of course, I said, rising from the ergonomic chair that suddenly felt uncomfortable after 15 years of faithful service. Is there anything else? Vanessa and Pamela exchanged glances clearly thrown by my composure. They'd prepared for histrionics for pleading. Perhaps they'd even choreographed a security escort, just in case Vanessa recovered first. That's all for now. Thank you for making this professional. The word hung in the air between us as I gathered my folder and nodded a goodbye. I'd been professional for 15 years while watching younger male colleagues advance past me. I'd been professional when Jonathan Blake took credit for my algorithm at last year's industry conference, and I would remain professional for exactly 3 more days. As I walked back to my office, I passed the glass-walled executive suite where the leadership team was meeting. Through the transparent barrier, I could see CEO Jonathan Blake gesturing animatedly at a PowerPoint presentation titled Q3 Revenue Projections. His tailored navy suit complemented his silver fox appearance, distinguished graying at the temples that on him was considered an asset, not a liability. The same Jonathan Blake who had referred to me only as one of our research team members when accepting an innovation award for my work. I closed my office door soon to be someone else's office and pulled out my personal phone, sending a single text message. "It's happening. Friday is my last day." The response came immediately. "Perfect timing. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize details." I smiled as I looked at the calendar on my desk. Today was Wednesday, Friday. I would leave Tech Vantage for the last time. And Monday would be fascinating. After sending the text, I sat at my desk for several moments, allowing myself to absorb the reality of what had just happened. 15 years and nearly a quarter of my life devoted to this company. I glanced around my office, the degrees on the wall from MIT and Stanford, the framed patents all credited to Tech. Vantage, of course, the photos of my daughter Gabriella, at various stages of growing up while I worked late nights and weekends to prove my worth. A knock at my door interrupted my reverie. It was Sophia Antonopoulos, the youngest member of my team. At 27, she represented everything Tech Vantage claimed to value: brilliant, energetic, and innovative. Her dark curls were pulled back in a casual ponytail, and her expressive brown eyes now regarded me with concern. "Dr. Reyes, do you have a minute?" Her voice was tentative, unusual for someone normally so confident. "Of course. Sophia, come in." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She closed the door carefully behind her. "There are rumors people are saying you've been called to HR." Her fingers twisted nervously in her lap. "Is something happening?" I considered my response carefully. Sophia had joined my team straight from MIT 2 years ago, turning down offers from Google and Amazon because she'd wanted to work specifically with me. Her brilliance had been evident from day one, her loyalty even more so. "The company is restructuring." I said finally. "I'll be leaving at the end of the week." Sophia's eyes widened. "What? That's insane!" "Your algorithm is literally the backbone of AccountSphere. Without you, without me." I interrupted gently. "Tech Vantage will continue. That's how corporations work, Sophia. No one is irreplaceable." I paused, then added, "At least that's what they believe." She leaned forward, voice lowered despite the closed door. "Is this about the patent I overheard Jonathan and Vanessa arguing about it last month?" I blinked in surprise. "What did you hear exactly?" Jonathan was saying something about securing the IP before making any personnel changes. Vanessa assured him it was already company property, regardless of who invented it. Sophia's eyes narrowed. "They were talking about your algorithm, weren't they?" "It appears so." I confirmed, impressed by her insight, and slightly amused by the irony. Tech Vantage was so concerned about protecting their intellectual property from outside threats, they'd never considered the risk of losing it through their own internal actions. "What will you do?" she asked. "I'll land on my feet," I assured her. "And I suggest you update your resume. Sophia, things are about to change around here, and not necessarily for the better." She nodded slowly. "I've already had a few recruiters reach out recently. I just didn't want to leave your team. Loyalty is admirable," I said with a smile. "But in this industry, you need to prioritize your own career. Remember that." After Sophia left, I turned to my computer and began methodically organizing my personal and professional files. Years of habit had taught me to keep meticulous backups of everything. Emails, development logs, meeting notes. I didn't touch company property. Of course, that would be both unethical and foolish, but I carefully verified that my personal development logs for the algorithm refinements were properly secured on my home server. The algorithm, my masterpiece. 5 years ago, I had identified a fundamental flaw in how accounting software processed large data sets. The existing methods were reliable but inefficient, requiring massive computing resources for the complex calculations needed by major corporations. My breakthrough had been elegantly simple in concept, but fiendishly complex in execution. A distributed processing approach that broke calculations into optimized components that could run in parallel, then reassemble with perfect accuracy. The memory of the night the solution had finally crystallized remained vivid in my mind. I had been sitting at my home office desk, staring at lines of code while rain lashed against the windows. Gabriella, then a college sophomore, had brought me a cup of tea and asked about my problem. As I explained it to her, translating complex computer science concept, for a biology major, something had clicked. The solution had appeared in my mind with sudden clarity. I had spent the rest of the night coding, furiously stopping, only when morning light filtered through the blinds. When I presented the concept to Tech Vantage, Jonathan had initially dismissed it as too experimental. It was only after a prototype demonstrated a 40% performance improvement that he'd reluctantly approved further development. Now that same algorithm processed billions of transactions daily for Fortune 500 companies. And Tech Vantage had just fired its creator. The afternoon passed in a blur of meetings, status updates. I would never follow up on project reviews that would soon be someone else's problem. I maintained a calm professionalism throughout, giving no indication that anything had changed. Let them think I was quietly accepting my fate. The surprise would be all the sweeter on Monday. At 5:30 p.m., I packed my laptop and headed home to prepare for my dinner meeting with Marcus Hamilton. As I drove through Seattle's perpetual drizzle, I reflected on how I had reached this turning point. The misdirected email had been the catalyst, certainly, but the seeds had been planted months earlier. It had started with that industry conference in San Francisco, where Jonathan had accepted the Innovation in Financial Technology Award for Tech Vantage's revolutionary processing algorithm. Standing at the podium in his perfectly tailored suit, he had thanked the board, the executive team, and finally, almost as an afterthought, our talented research staff. Not a specific mention of my name. Despite the fact that everyone in the industry knew I had developed the algorithm, that night at the conference reception, Marcus Hamilton had approached me with a glass of champagne and a knowing smile. Quite an achievement, Dr. Reyes. He'd said, his deep voice carrying just far enough for me to hear. I wonder if the award would look different if it had your name on it instead of Tech Vantage's. That's not how corporations work. I'd replied automatically, the response programmed by years of being a team player. Isn't it? At Meridian Systems, we believe innovation deserves proper attribution. He had handed me his card before walking away. Just in case you ever want to discuss how things could work differently. I had kept the card tucked in my wallet more as a curiosity than a serious option. Until the email. Until I discovered the patent oversight. Until I realized that Tech Vantage had made a critical mistake. One that opened a door I had never anticipated. Now, as I pulled into my driveway, I felt a sense of calm determination. Tonight I would finalize the details of my new future. and TechVantage would learn that even the most seemingly compliant employees have their breaking points. That evening, I met Marcus Hamilton at Cascade, an upscale restaurant nestled in the hills overlooking Seattle, far from TechVantage's downtown headquarters. As the CEO of Meridian Systems, TechVantage's largest competitor, Marcus knew the value of discretion. He'd reserved a private dining alcove in the back, shielded from curious eyes by elegant Japanese screens and strategically positioned indoor bamboo plants. Marcus rose as I approached his tall frame, unfolding from the leather booth. At 62, he carried his years with confidence, salt and pepper hair, cropped close laugh lines framing intelligent eyes that missed nothing. We'd first met 20 years ago, at an industry conference, when we were both mid-level managers at competing firms. Our paths had crossed periodically since always maintaining a cordial, professional respect, despite our company's rivalry. "Elena," he said warmly, taking my hand briefly. "Right on time as always. Old habits," I replied, settling into the booth. The server appeared immediately with water and menus, then discreetly withdrew. "They actually did it," Marcus said, shaking his head after we ordered. "I suspected they might, but to cut the very person who developed their core technology." He left the sentence unfinished, the implication clear. "Jonathan never understood what I actually created," I replied, sipping my sparkling water. The cool liquid was a welcome contrast to the warmth that had been building inside me all day. Not anger exactly, but something more potent: determination. He saw the implementation, the user interface, the marketing potential, but the underlying architecture that was just tech stuff to him. The irony was almost too perfect. 3 months ago, I discovered the patent application for my distributed processing algorithm had never been filed by TechVantage's legal team, an oversight they'd claimed when I inquired. They'd assured me they'd handle it immediately, but something about their response had seemed off, prompting me to check the company's internal documentation. That's when I found it a strategy memo outlining plans to claim the algorithm as company-developed technology without specific inventor attribution. They'd planned to push me out before securing the patent, knowing intellectual property developed by employees typically belonged to the company. What TechVantage didn't know was that I'd already been working on refinements to the algorithm on my own time using my personal equipment. Those improvements, which dramatically increased processing efficiency by 43%, weren't covered by my employment agreement. I'd quietly filed for a patent under my own name. Last month, fully documented with timestamps and development logs that clearly showed the work was completed outside of company time. "All the paperwork is finalized," Marcus said now, sliding a leather portfolio across the table. "As soon as you sign, Meridian Systems officially acquires exclusive licensing rights to your patent." The carefully worded contract was printed on heavy cream-colored paper, the Meridian Systems logo embossed at the top. I'd already reviewed 3 drafts with my attorney, but I still read each page carefully, though I'd memorized the key terms: a 7-figure signing bonus, substantial equity in Meridian Systems, and ongoing royalties from all products using my algorithm. The press release goes out Monday morning announcing you as our new Chief Innovation Officer. Marcus continued pouring a glass of the Cabernet the server had just opened. The wine's ruby depth caught the intimate lighting of our alcove. "The legal team has vetted everything twice. Your development logs and timestamps are ironclad, proof the refinements were done on your own time." I signed the final page with a flourish, the Mont Blanc pen gliding smoothly across the paper. With this signature, I had secured my future, protected my team, and ensured recognition for my work. What do you think Jonathan's face will look like when he realizes what's happened? Marcus asked, unable to hide his satisfaction at the prospect. His question revealed the businessman beneath the polish, someone who appreciated a strategic victory as much as I did. I'm more concerned about my team. I admitted thinking of Rajiv's brilliant coding skills, Zoe's talent for user experience design, and the others who had brought my vision to life. They don't deserve to be caught in the fallout. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Already addressed. We have positions for all 6 of them if they're interested. Senior roles with significant raises. He raised his glass to new beginnings and to owning your own value. I added, clinking my glass against his. As the rich wine warmed my palate, I reflected on how different this moment was from the cold conference room this morning. There I had been an aging asset to be discarded. Here I was a valued innovator with a future brighter than my past. Our conversation flowed easily as dinner arrived, pan-seared scallops for me, steak for Marcus. We discussed the technical aspects of integrating my algorithm into Meridian's products, the market positioning we'd take against TechVantage, and the composition of the innovation team I would lead. There's something else I wanted to discuss, Marcus said as we finished our main course. Something more personal. I raised an eyebrow, curious. Oh, I know why I wanted to bring you to Meridian, your technical brilliance, and the competitive advantage your algorithm represents. He paused, considering his words. But I'm curious, beyond the obvious professional slights, what made you willing to make this move? Now you had opportunities before. The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on the strategy, the technical aspects, the legal maneuvering, that I hadn't fully articulated my personal motivation, even to myself, 2 months ago. I began slowly. I was in a meeting with the executive team. We were discussing the 5-year technology roadmap. I presented research showing a dramatic shift toward cloud-native architecture and suggested we needed to prepare AccountSphere for that transition. Jonathan dismissed it outright, saying, "Let's stick with what works now. We can worry about clouds when the weather changes." Marcus winced at the short-sightedness. Later that same day, I continued. A junior developer, barely 3 years out of college, made essentially the same suggestion, in different words. Jonathan called it visionary thinking, and assigned a team to explore it. I took a sip of wine before continuing. That night, my daughter Gabriella called me. She's finishing her PhD in bioengineering at Stanford. She was excited about a breakthrough in her research, but mentioned she was concerned about presenting it because a male colleague had tried to co-opt her previous work. I met Marcus's gaze directly. I realized I was setting an example for her, an example of accepting less than I deserved, of allowing others to take credit for my work, of being grateful, just to have a seat at the table. And it was the wrong example. "So this isn't just about the algorithm," Marcus observed. "The algorithm is my life's work," I replied. "But this move is about something bigger. It's about showing Gabriella and every other woman in tech that we don't have to accept the status quo, that innovation deserves proper attribution, regardless of gender or age." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's why I wanted you at Meridian, Dr. Reyes. Not just for what you've created, but for what you represent, change." As we finished our dessert, a shared chocolate souffle, that the chef insisted we try, Marcus outlined the next steps. I would take the rest of the week to organize my departure from TechVantage, while Meridian prepared for my arrival. The press release was scheduled for 7 a.m. Monday morning. Time to hit the markets just as trading opened. One last thing, Marcus said as we prepared to leave. How would you feel about speaking at the Women in Innovation Summit next month? As Meridian's new CIO, you'd have quite a story to tell. I smiled already, imagining the ripple effect this could create. I think that's an excellent idea. It's time more stories like mine were told. As we walked out of the restaurant, the Seattle skyline spread before us, lights twinkling in the misty darkness. In the distance, I could see the Tech Vantage, building its logo illuminated against the night sky. By this time next week, that logo might not shine quite so brightly. Thursday morning arrived with the familiar Seattle rain droplets, sliding down my bedroom window as my alarm chimed at 6 a.m. For a moment, I contemplated calling in sick. After all, what could they do? Fire me, but professionalism won out. I had 3 decades of showing up, of doing the work, of exceeding expectations. I wouldn't change that pattern now, even with the finish line in sight. As I dressed in one of my carefully selected, blend-in outfits, a charcoal pantsuit with minimal accessories, I reflected on the wardrobe I'd cultivated at Tech Vantage. Nothing too bold or attention-grabbing. Nothing that would make male colleagues uncomfortable or invite comments about my appearance, rather than my ideas I'd learned early in my career to let my work speak for itself, to become almost invisible as a person, so that my contributions might be seen. How different my closet would look to 6 months from now. I mused, selecting a simple silver necklace. As Chief Innovation Officer, I could finally dress for myself rather than for the comfort of others. I arrived at the office by 7:30 a.m. early as usual. The security guard, Manuel, greeted me with the same friendly nod he'd offered for the past decade. "Good morning, Dr. Reyes," beating the rush as always. "Good morning, Manuel. How's your daughter doing at college?" I asked, remembering our conversation from last week. His face lit up. "She made the dean's list. First semester, and already top of her class in computer science. I told her she should apply for an internship here when she's ready. Maybe work with you someday." The irony wasn't lost on me. "She should aim higher," I said with a smile. "Tell her to call me in a few months. I might have some suggestions." My morning was packed with meetings, mostly knowledge transfer sessions, where I documented processes, shared access credentials, and explained the nuances of projects I'd been leading. I was meticulous in my documentation, partly from professional habit, and partly because I wanted no one to claim later that I had sabotaged the transition. My departure would be above reproach. The chaos that followed would be entirely of Tech Vantage's own making. At lunch, I met privately with Rajiv in a small cafe, 2 blocks from the office. He was already seated when I arrived, his lanky frame hunched over a laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced precision. At 34, Rajiv was the backbone of my development team. Brilliant, dedicated, and unfailingly ethical. He looked up as I approached, pushing his rectangular glasses up his nose in a habitual gesture. "Dr. Reyes," he greeted me, closing his laptop. "I'm still processing yesterday's news. The whole team is in shock. Thank you for meeting me, Rajiv," I said, settling into the chair across from him. After we ordered salad, for me a sandwich for him, I leaned forward. "I wanted to talk to you privately before speaking with the whole team." "About your plans?" he asked directly. Rajiv had never been one for small talk. "Yes." I paused, considering how much to reveal. Rajiv and I had worked together for 8 years. If I couldn't trust him, I couldn't trust anyone. I've accepted a position at another company. A significant position. His eyebrows rose. That was fast. It's been in development for a while. I admitted the timing of my departure from Tech Vantage simply accelerated matters. Rajiv studied me for a moment, his analytical mind clearly working through the possibilities. This is about the algorithm, isn't it? The patent situation. It wasn't a question. I smiled slightly. You always were quick, Rajiv. Yes, it's related to that. I've secured a patent for the refinements I developed on my own time. He let out a low whistle. And let me guess, the new employer has acquired licensing rights to that patent. They have. And they're interested in more than just the algorithm. I met his gaze directly. They're interested in the team that helped develop it. Understanding dawned in his eyes. All of us, all of you. If you're interested, competitive salaries, better benefits, and proper recognition for your contributions. I pulled out my personal phone. I can't share details here, but if you give me your personal email, you'll receive more information this weekend. Rajiv provided his email without hesitation. The team will follow you. You know. We've all been frustrated by how Tech Vantage treats its technical staff. Sophia was in tears yesterday after the announcement. She said you were the reason she turned down Google. Tech Vantage has never understood how to value its most important assets. I replied, but other companies do. After lunch, I returned to find an email from Vanessa, requesting a meeting to discuss transition details. The summons came as no surprise. She would be determining who would attempt to fill my shoes after my departure. Her office was the antithesis of Mine Corner location, with floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture in fashionable whites and chromes, and prominently displayed awards, several for projects I had spearheaded. She gestured me to a seat without rising from behind her imposing glass desk. Elena, thank you for making time. She began as though I had a choice. I wanted to discuss knowledge transfer for your current projects. I've already prepared comprehensive documentation. I replied. My team is fully briefed, and I've scheduled handover meetings for tomorrow. Vanessa looked momentarily surprised by my efficiency. That's very thorough of you. There's also the matter of your replacement. We're considering promoting Ethan Collins to lead the research team temporarily. Ethan Collins, 31, ambitious, with half my experience and twice my confidence. He'd been at Tech Vantage for 3 years and had spent most of that time taking credit for other people's ideas, particularly those from female colleagues. Ethan is certainly eager. I offered neutrally. Though his background is more in implementation than innovation, he might struggle with the theoretical aspects of current research projects. Vanessa waved away my concern. He's demonstrated leadership potential. Jonathan sees him as the future of the department. I'm sure he does. I thought Ethan was essentially a younger version of Jonathan. Charismatic, politically savvy, and skilled at claiming credit. They probably played golf together. Is there anything specific you think Ethan should focus on first? Vanessa asked, making notes on her tablet. The distributed processing architecture will need ongoing refinement. I replied truthfully. It's the core of AccountSphere's competitive advantage. Without continuous improvement, other products will catch up quickly. What I didn't add was that those other products would soon include Meridian Systems offerings powered by my enhanced algorithm. Ethan would be playing catch-up from day one without understanding the fundamental principles that made the original algorithm work. Jonathan mentioned you were working on efficiency improvements to the algorithm. Vanessa continued. He was quite interested in those where do things stand. So that was it. They knew I'd been working on refinements and wanted to ensure they captured that intellectual property before I left. Early stages. I replied with practiced ease. Mostly theoretical exploration. Nothing concrete implemented yet. Vanessa frowned slightly. But there was a presentation scheduled for next month on performance enhancements. Jonathan had it on his calendar. That was for the existing implementation optimization of current code, not algorithmic refinements. I explained the lie flowing smoothly. I've documented those optimization recommendations in the transition materials. She seemed satisfied with that explanation, making another note on her tablet. One last thing. Your team. Any recommendations for managing them after your departure? Any potential issues we should be aware of? The question revealed her concern that my team might be difficult for a new manager, particularly one they didn't respect. She was right to be worried. They're professionals. I said simply, treat them with respect, acknowledge their contributions, and they'll continue to deliver excellent work. All true statements, though I expected none of those conditions would be met under Ethan's leadership. As I left Vanessa's office, I noticed Jonathan watching from his corner suite. Our eyes met briefly before he turned away, resuming a phone call. Had he been monitoring our meeting, wondering if I would cause problems? Little did he know that the problems were already set in motion, ticking away like a perfectly calibrated time bomb. That evening, I spent hours preparing emails to each member of my team, sending them to personal addresses I had collected over the years for emergency contact purposes. Each message was professionally worded, explaining my new position at Meridian Systems and extending an invitation to discuss similar opportunities. There I included links to the relevant job descriptions, salary ranges, and benefits information that Marcus had provided. As I pressed send on the final email, I felt a momentary pang of guilt. Was I being disloyal to Tech Vantage? The feeling passed quickly. Loyalty should be reciprocal, and Tech Vantage had demonstrated none toward me. Besides, I wasn't stealing employees. I was offering them choices. What they decided would be entirely up to them. Before bed, I called Gabriella, needing to hear my daughter's voice. She answered on the second ring, the sounds of her lab audible in the background. "Mom, I was just thinking about you. How are things changing?" I replied. "Dramatically, I'm leaving Tech Vantage." "What? After 15 years, what happened?" Her concern was evident even through the phone. It's a long story, but the short version is that I've accepted a position as Chief Innovation Officer at Meridian Systems. There was a moment of stunned silence before Gabriella let out a whoop of delight. "Chief Innovation Officer, Mom, that's incredible. But wait, isn't Meridian Systems Tech Vantage's main competitor?" "Yes." I confirmed. "And there's more to it than just a new job. It involves my algorithm." I explained the situation, the patent oversight, my independent refinements, the strategic move to Meridian. As a scientist herself, Gabriella immediately grasped both the technical and ethical dimensions. "They really never filed the patent with your name on it?" she asked, incredulous. "After you created the entire algorithm, corporate attribution only." I confirmed standard practice, but still, no, not still. Gabriella interrupted fiercely. "It's wrong, Mom. You've always taught me that innovation deserves recognition. That's why I'm so careful about co-authorship on my research papers. I know honey, and I'm finally taking my own advice." I paused. "Part of why I'm doing this is because of you. I want to show you that it's never too late to stand up for your own value. Oh, Mom." Her voice softened. "You've always shown me that every day. But I'm glad the rest of the world is going to see it now, too." After we hung up, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about my career or even about the algorithm. It was about setting an example for the next generation, showing that innovation and its creators deserved respect, recognition, and fair compensation. Tomorrow would be my final day at Tech Vantage, and then a new chapter would begin. Thursday and Friday passed in a blur of exit interviews, knowledge transfer meetings, and goodbyes to colleagues. I maintained my professional composure throughout, even as rumors spread across the company like wildfire. Administrative assistants gave me sympathetic glances in the hallways, their eyes communicating what office politics prevented them from saying aloud. Junior developers approached awkwardly, asking if I'd provide LinkedIn recommendations before I left. I agreed to each request, knowing that networks matter in the tech world, especially for the young engineers who might one day remember my kindness. I documented everything, meticulously, every project, every password, every process. The transition notes I prepared were comprehensive, detailing the architecture of systems I'd helped build over 15 years. This thoroughness wasn't merely professionalism. It was evidence that I had acted in good faith while the company had not. On Thursday afternoon, I encountered Rajiv Sharma, my lead developer, in the break room. He glanced around to ensure we were alone before speaking. "Is it true?" he asked quietly, dark eyes concerned behind his rectangular glasses. At 34, Rajiv was already one of the most talented developers I'd ever worked with. "Are they really letting you go?" "It's true," I confirmed, stirring cream into my coffee with deliberate calm. "They're calling it a restructuring." "That's corporate bullshit," he muttered, his typical reserve cracking. "Everyone knows you built AccountSphere's core. Without me, they'll manage." I interrupted gently. "But I'd like to talk to you about something not here. Dinner tonight. Bring Zoe and the others if you can." My treat? That evening at a quiet restaurant 10 blocks from Tech Vantage's offices, I met with my team. Rajiv arrived first, followed by Zoe Chen, our UX specialist, whose designs had made complex processes intuitive for users. Then came Daniel Okafor, our database architect, Lin Wei, our testing lead, Thomas Rodriguez, our security specialist, and finally, Sophia Antonopoulos, our newest member. Barely 2 years out of MIT, they were subdued as they took their seats' faces, reflecting varying degrees of concern and anger. I looked at each of them, feeling a surge of pride in this group I'd assembled and mentored. "I'm hosting this dinner for 2 reasons. I began after we'd ordered. First, to thank you for your incredible work over the years. You're the finest team I've ever had the privilege to lead." Sophia, the youngest, looked ready to cry. Thomas stared intently at his water glass. "Second," I continued, "I want you all to know I'll be fine." In fact, I paused, considering my words carefully. "I believe things are about to get very interesting. I can't share details yet, but I want you to keep an open mind about your options in the coming week. They're already talking about reorganizing us," Daniel said, his deep voice tinged with frustration. "Splitting us between different product teams. Breaking up the band." Thomas added with a bitter smile, "Just watch your emails next week." I advised, all of you. Personal emails, not company accounts. Their glances toward one another told me they understood. In tech, classified information traveled through personal channels when necessary. To the best team in the business, I said, raising my glass. Whatever happens next, know that I value each of you tremendously. As dinner progressed, the conversation turned to memories from our years working together, the late-night coding sessions fueled by pizza and determination, the breakthrough moments when seemingly insurmountable problems suddenly yielded to our collective intelligence, the celebrations when our work delivered results beyond expectations. Remember when we first implemented the distributed architecture? Rajiv asked, grinning at the memory. The look on Jonathan's face when the processing time dropped by 40%. He actually stuttered. Zoe recalled laughing. I thought he was having a stroke, and then immediately called the marketing team to start revising all the promotional materials. Lynn added, before we'd even fully tested it. That's because he finally understood what Dr. Reyes had been trying to tell him for months. Sophia said, looking at me with undisguised admiration, that the algorithm would change everything. I smiled at their recollections, touched by their loyalty and awareness of what had really happened behind the scenes. They knew who had created the technology that had transformed TechVantage's fortunes, regardless of whose name appeared on press releases or industry awards. As we were finishing dessert, Daniel leaned forward. Dr. Reyes, we've been talking among ourselves. If you're starting something new. He glanced at his colleagues who nodded in encouragement. We want you to know we'd follow you. All of us. Thomas raised his glass. To the next chapter, wherever it takes us. The team's solidarity moved me deeply. They were risking their own job security to express loyalty to a leader who was leaving. In the cutthroat world of tech, such gestures were rare and precious. Thank you, I said, simply fighting back unexpected emotion. That means more than you know. As we left the restaurant, Sophia hung back to walk beside me. Dr. Reyes, I just wanted to say, you're the reason I turned down Google working with you. Has taught me more than any other job could have. Whatever you do next, I hope there might be a place for me. I squeezed her shoulder gently. Keep your phone handy this weekend, Sophia. You might receive an interesting call. Friday morning brought a strange sense of unreality. I arrived early as usual, but this time carrying a small box for personal items. The office felt different, somehow the same physical space, but transformed by knowledge of my impending departure. Had the lights always been this harsh? The cubicle walls, this beige, the carpet, this worn. The day was structured around farewell rituals, a team lunch where my researchers presented me with a parting gift, a beautiful fountain pen engraved with the Algorithm Whisperer, a surprisingly emotional goodbye from the administrative staff who had supported me for years, and finally the formal exit interview with Pamela from HR. During my final exit interview on Friday afternoon, Pamela Chen went through the standard checklist with mechanical efficiency. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun that matched her by-the-books approach to human resources. You understand that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains the property of TechVantage. She stated, pushing a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Of course, I replied pleasantly. Anything developed within the scope of my employment using company resources during company time. I emphasized those qualifiers slightly, but Pamela was too busy checking boxes to notice the distinction. And you affirm you have no copies of proprietary company information. I have taken nothing that belongs to TechVantage. I confirmed truthfully. The patent was mine after all. Please sign here to acknowledge receipt of your severance package. She continued sliding another form across the table. The document detailed 30 weeks of salary, continued health benefits for 3 months, and outplacement services standard for an executive at my level, but hardly compensation for 15 years of innovation that had transformed the company's fortunes. I signed without comment. The severance would be a nice bonus on top of my new compensation package. Dr. Reyes, Pamela said, as we concluded, her professional mask slipping slightly. I want you to know that many of us are surprised by this restructuring decision. Your contributions to TechVantage have been significant. The unexpected acknowledgement caught me off guard. Thank you, Pamela. That's kind of you to say. It's simply the truth. She hesitated, then added, the tech industry can be challenging for women our age. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. The solidarity conveyed in that simple, our age, was touching. Pamela wasn't much younger than me. Perhaps in her late 40s, she too would eventually face the subtle and not-so-subtle ageism that pervaded the industry. The future might be more interesting than you expect. I replied with a small smile. Keep an eye on industry news next week. As I packed the personal items from my desk, family photos, a collection of conference badges marking 15 years of industry events, the coffee mug my team had given me last Christmas. Vanessa stopped by, leaning against my doorframe with artificial casualness. I just wanted to check that everything's clear for your departure, she said, watching me place items into a cardboard box. Her designer blouse and pencil skirt created the perfect corporate armor, but I could sense her discomfort beneath the polished exterior. Crystal clear, I replied, wrapping a small award I'd received for the very algorithm now at the center of my plans. The irony wasn't lost on me as I carefully placed it between layers of tissue paper. You know, Elena, these restructuring decisions are never personal. Vanessa continued, her fingers toying with the pearl pendant at her throat. Jonathan feels the company needs to move in a more youthful direction. I looked up, meeting her gaze directly. I understand completely. Business is business. Something in my tone made her pause for a brief moment. Uncertainty flickered across her face, but she quickly dismissed it. What could a soon-to-be unemployed 55-year-old woman possibly do? Will you be taking some time off? She asked, an artificial note of concern in her voice. Actually, I already have something lined up, I replied, closing the box with a decisive movement. I start Monday. Oh. Surprise crossed her features. That's fast. Anything interesting? I smiled. Very a leadership position I'm quite excited about. She nodded absently, already mentally moving on to other matters. Well, good luck with that. As I walked out of TechVantage's glass headquarters for the final time, keycards surrendered and personal belongings in tow, I took a moment to look back at the building where I'd spent 15 years of my career. On the top floor, I could see the executive conference room lit up for an evening meeting, likely discussing how to redistribute my responsibilities among younger, less experienced, and significantly less expensive staff. Little did they know that in less than 72 hours, that same room would be hosting an emergency crisis meeting instead. The weekend passed in a state of calm preparation. I spent Saturday morning setting up my home office with new equipment, purchased specifically for this transition, a high-powered workstation, extra monitors, and the latest security software. The suburban Seattle home I'd purchased 10 years ago had always featured a dedicated workspace, but now it gleamed with technological purpose. Marcus called in the afternoon to confirm final details. Everything's set for Monday. He assured me the press release has been approved by legal. Your office is ready, and the development team is excited to meet you. Any reaction from TechVantage about my departure? I asked, curious whether news had spread beyond the company yet. Nothing official. Marcus replied, but our industry sources say there's confusion about why they let you go. The timing has raised eyebrows, especially given AccountSphere's success. I smiled at the understatement. They'll understand soon enough. Later that afternoon, my doorbell rang, a surprise visit from Gabriella, who had flown in from California without telling me. I couldn't miss this moment. She explained, hugging me tightly. At 26, she was the perfect blend of my analytical mind and her father's artistic temperament. Brilliant, creative, and fiercely independent. My mom, the soon-to-be CIO, taking down corporate sexism and ageism in one strategic move. I had to be here. We spent the evening catching up. Gabriella shared updates on her dissertation research, a revolutionary approach to using bioengineered microorganisms for environmental remediation, while I filled her in on more details about my move to Meridian Systems. I still can't believe they never properly filed the patent, she said, shaking her head as we sat on my deck watching the sunset. That's beyond negligent. It's not uncommon, I replied. Companies often prioritize speed over proper documentation. They assume employees won't have the resources or knowledge to challenge them. They assumed wrong with you. Gabriella noted with satisfaction. Did you ever consider staying and fighting from within? I thought about her question seriously. For years, that's exactly what I did, pushed for recognition, for advancement, for respect. I played by their rules, thinking merit would eventually win out. I sipped my tea, watching a seabird circle over the distant water. But there comes a point when you realize the game is rigged. Then you have a choice. Keep playing a game you can't win or change the rules entirely. And that's what you're doing, Monday, Gabriella said with a grin. Changing the rules. On Sunday, I treated myself to a shopping trip. The corporate wardrobe I'd cultivated at Tech Vantage had been deliberately understated clothes, designed to help me blend in rather than stand out. Now I selected pieces that communicated authority. A charcoal pinstripe suit with subtle red piping. A deep blue dress with architectural lines, shoes that were both comfortable and commanding. Special occasion, asked the sales associate as she wrapped my purchases. New job, I replied simply. Congratulations moving up in the world, I smiled. You could say that. That evening I received texts from each member of my former team, confirming they had received and reviewed the job offers from Meridian Systems. All 6 had decided to accept Rajiv's message, captured their collective sentiment. Unanimous decision. We're ready to follow you to the next challenge. When do we start? I responded with information about start dates and onboarding procedures, feeling a deep satisfaction. Not only would I have my algorithm, but I would also have the team that understood it best. Tech Vantage's knowledge drain would be complete and devastating. Before bed, I checked all my preparation materials. One final time, the press release was ready. My documentation organized, my presentation for the Meridian development team prepared. Everything was in place for what promised to be one of the most significant days of my professional life. I received a text from Marcus. Everything in place for tomorrow. Car will pick you up at 7:30. Press release finalized and scheduled. Nago Swatura Satohai. I responded with a simple, perfect, before pouring myself a glass of wine and stepping onto my back deck. The Seattle evening stretched before me, the distant Space Needle illuminated against the darkening sky. 15 years at Tech Vantage had gradually eroded my confidence. But the woman who would walk into Meridian Systems tomorrow was reclaiming her power with every breath. Monday morning dawned bright and clear. The April sunshine felt like nature's endorsement of new beginnings. I dressed carefully in my new charcoal suit, applied makeup with precision, and secured my silver-streaked hair in a sleek chignon. The woman in the mirror looked confident, powerful, and completely in control. Gabriella appeared in the doorway, already dressed for her early flight back to Stanford. "Look at you," she said with obvious pride. "Tech Vantage has no idea what's about to hit them. They'll learn soon enough." I replied, checking my appearance one final time. "Ready for your flight. All packed. I've got a ride-share coming in 20 minutes. She hesitated. "Mom, I just want to say I'm really proud of you. Not just for the new job or the patent strategy, but for showing that it's never too late to demand what you deserve." I hugged her tightly, blinking back unexpected tears. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything." The Meridian Systems town car arrived precisely at 7:30 a.m. A sleek black vehicle with tinted windows and a professional driver who greeted me by name. "Good morning, Dr. Reyes. I'm Michael, Mr. Hamilton. Asked me to ensure you arrive comfortably for your first day." The drive to Meridian's headquarters in Bellevue took us across Lake Washington. The morning sun glinting off the water, I watched the Tech Vantage building disappear in the rearview mirror, growing smaller with each mile. Meridian's campus was a collection of modern buildings nestled among carefully maintained green spaces. Unlike Tech Vantage's single-glass tower, Meridian had spread horizontally, creating a more inviting atmosphere. The main building featured a dramatic two-story entrance, with the company's blue and silver logo prominently displayed. Marcus met me in the lobby, extending his hand formally for the benefit of watching employees. "Welcome to Meridian Systems, Dr. Reyes," he said loud enough to be overheard. "We're delighted to have you joining our leadership team." A young woman with an iPad stepped forward. "I'm Layla, your executive assistant," she said warmly. "I've prepared your office and scheduled an orientation session for 9:40, followed by your first meeting with the development team at 10:30. Marcus escorted me to the executive floor where my corner office waited. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of Mount Rainier in the distance, a stark contrast to my former interior office at Tech Vantage. The space was tastefully furnished with a modern desk, comfortable meeting area, and the latest technology. The press release went live at 7 a.m., Marcus informed me as I settled into my new leather chair. "Industry newsletters are already picking it up. I've got the communications team monitoring reactions." He handed me a tablet displaying the announcement. "Meridian Systems acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary processing algorithm. Welcomes creator Dr. Elena Reyes as Chief Innovation Officer. Bellevue, WA, Meridian Systems. Announced today the acquisition of exclusive licensing rights to the patented distributed processing algorithm that powers the company's next-generation financial software products. The company is also pleased to announce the appointment of Dr. Elena Reyes, the algorithm's inventor, as Chief Innovation Officer, effective immediately. Dr. Reyes, formerly Research Director at Tech Vantage, brings over 25 years of experience in advanced computing technologies and financial software development. As the original creator of the distributed processing algorithm that has revolutionized data handling and enterprise accounting systems, Dr. Reyes will lead Meridian's innovation strategy and oversee the integration of her patented technology into the company's product suite. "We are thrilled to welcome Dr. Reyes to our executive team," said Marcus Hamilton, CEO of Meridian Systems. "Her groundbreaking work in distributed processing has transformed the industry, and her leadership will accelerate our product development efforts dramatically The announcement detailed my background, emphasized my role as the sole inventor of the patented technology, and outlined how Meridian Systems would be integrating the algorithm into their next generation of products. Most importantly, it clearly stated that any company currently using the technology would need to negotiate licensing agreements with Meridian Systems moving forward. "It's perfect," I said, scrolling through the carefully crafted language. Direct but not provocative. The legal team made sure we threaded that needle. Marcus agreed. Clear ownership without explicitly naming Tech Vantage. They'll know exactly what it means. My orientation morning passed efficiently as I met key department heads and received briefings on ongoing projects. At precisely 9:15 a.m., my personal phone lit up with the first text from Rajiv. "Complete chaos here. What did you do?" I smiled, typing back, "Check your personal email. All 6 of you have offers waiting." Meanwhile, 8 miles away at Tech Vantage headquarters, the scheduled Monday morning executive meeting was undergoing a dramatic transformation. According to Rajiv's play-by-play updates throughout the morning, Jonathan had arrived at the office to find the company's general counsel and chief financial officer waiting at his door. Both ashen-faced, the industry announcement had hit their inboxes, simultaneously setting off immediate alarms. By 9:30 a.m., what should have been a routine start-of-week meeting had morphed into an emergency crisis session. Board members were calling in remotely. The legal team was frantically reviewing my employment contract and the documentation around the algorithm's development. "They're pulling every file with your name on it." Rajiv reported, "Someone just wheeled in all the servers from the research division for the tech team to analyze." I could picture the scene perfectly. Jonathan pacing the conference room, demanding explanations from Vanessa and the legal department. The stock would already be responding to the news. Investors hated uncertainty, and the announcement had created plenty of it. At 10:45 a.m., I received an email from Jonathan himself, the desperation practically emanating from my screen. From Blake Jonathan. To Elena Reyes. Subject: Urgent discussion needed. Elena, there appears to be a misunderstanding regarding intellectual property rights. Please call me at your earliest convenience to discuss. This situation can surely be resolved amicably between us. Jonathan Blake, CEO, Tech Vantage Inc. I forwarded it to Meridian Systems' legal team without responding. The calculated informality of Elena rather than Dr. Reyes wasn't lost on me, nor was the sudden desire for amicable resolution from a man who had authorized my dismissal less than a week ago. By noon, the industry was buzzing with speculation. Tech Vantage's stock had dropped 7% since the market opened, while Meridian Systems had seen a 12% increase. 3 different technology journals had requested interviews with me about the strategic coup that had shaken the accounting software industry. "How are you feeling?" Marcus asked, stopping by my office as I prepared for my afternoon meetings. "Validated." I replied honestly. 15 years of watching others take credit for my work, of being told I should be grateful. Just to have a seat at the table, and now, finally recognition. I gestured to the view from my window. "And an office with actual daylight," Marcus laughed. "That's the bare minimum you deserve." Layla appeared at the door. "Dr. Reyes, the development team is ready for you in the main conference room." She hesitated. "Tech Vantage's CEO has called 4 times in the last hour. Please let him know I'm in meetings all day." I replied calmly. "I'll have our legal team reach out to discuss licensing options later this week." As I walked toward my first meeting as Chief Innovation Officer, My phone buzzed with another update from Rajiv. Board just called emergency session. Jonathan looks like he's about to explode. PS my team. And I accept your offer. When can we start? By Tuesday morning, the full impact of my departure had become clear to everyone at TechVantage. Their flagship product account sphere relied entirely on my algorithm to process the massive data sets that gave it an edge over competitors. Without licensing rights to my patent, they faced two equally unpalatable options: negotiate with Meridian Systems or rebuild their core technology from scratch, a process that would take years and millions in development costs. The industry news sites were running constant updates. TechWire's headline blared, "Algorithm Patent Dispute Threatens Tech. Vantage's Market Position." Innovation. Daily was more direct. Reyes Patent Move. Blindsides. Former employer. I spent the morning reviewing Meridian's current product architecture with their development leads, identifying integration points for my algorithm. The team was receptive and eager, asking insightful questions about implementation strategies. The contrast with my final months at TechVantage was stark here. My expertise was valued, not tolerated. Victor has called an all-hands meeting for 2 p.m. Rajiv texted during my lunch break. It was his last day at TechVantage. He and the rest of my former team would be starting at Meridian Systems the following Monday. Rumor is they're going to try to sue you. I forwarded his message to our legal department, who responded almost immediately. Let them try. Your documentation is impeccable. Development logs, timestamps, personal equipment usage, all clearly established. We've prepared for this scenario. The anticipation of legal action didn't concern me. I had documented every step of my process, meticulously working nights and weekends on my personal equipment to refine the algorithm. My home security system had even captured time-stamped footage of me entering and exiting my home office during the development period, evidence I had collected knowing it might one day be necessary. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new role with remarkable ease. The respect I received at Meridian Systems was a stark contrast to my final years at TechVantage. When I spoke in meetings, people actually listened. My ideas weren't repackaged by male colleagues and presented as their own. My age and experience were viewed as assets rather than liabilities. The engineering team is implementing your efficiency improvements, Marcus informed me during our afternoon briefing. We sat in his spacious office, where awards and family photos shared equal space on the shelves. Early testing shows a 51% performance boost, even better than we projected. I had several refinements I never shared with TechVantage. I admitted accepting the coffee his assistant had brought in. After I discovered they were planning to eliminate my position, I saw no reason to give them my best work. Their loss, our gain. Marcus replied with a satisfied smile. Speaking of which, the first licensing inquiry came in this morning. Not from TechVantage, yet they're still in denial, but from Dataflow Systems. They're worried about being caught in the crossfire. Dataflow is smart to be proactive. I agreed Dataflow was a mid-sized company that licensed TechVantage's processing engine for their specialized manufacturing accounting software. We should offer them favorable terms. They could become a valuable strategic partner. At 3:30 p.m., Rajiv sent a detailed account of Jonathan's all-hands meeting. The CEO had tried to project confidence, assuring the staff that TechVantage would vigorously defend our proprietary technology. But the anxiety in the room had been palpable. Several employees had already updated their LinkedIn profiles, sensing the company's vulnerability. Vanessa looked like she was about to faint when someone asked directly if they'd failed to secure the patent. Rajiv reported. Jonathan cut the question period short after that. That evening, I received a call from my sister Maya, who lived in Portland with her family. "I just read about you online," she said, excitement evident in her voice. "My little sister, the tech revolutionary. Why didn't you tell me what you were planning?" I couldn't risk it leaking. I explained, settling onto my sofa with a glass of wine. The fewer people who knew, the better. "Well, I'm proud of you," Maya said warmly. "After all those years of them undervaluing you, it's about time you showed them exactly what you're worth. It feels good." I admitted, scary but good. "Scary, Elena, you've never been afraid of anything in your life," I laughed. "That's patently untrue. Remember when I was terrified to apply to MIT because I thought I wouldn't fit in? And then you graduated top of your class." Maya countered. "You've always done the scary thing anyway. That's your superpower." As I ended the call, I realized she was right. Throughout my career, I had faced down fear, the fear of being the only woman in the room, the only person over 40 in a meeting, the only one questioning a flawed strategy. This was simply the next challenge, albeit on a much larger scale. By Wednesday, the industry fallout had intensified. 2 major clients had contacted Meridian Systems about switching from AccountSphere, concerned about TechVantage's ability to maintain the product without the algorithm's creator. Our stock had risen another 8%, while TechVantage's continued its decline. I received a call from Pamela Chen, the same woman who had slid my severance package across the table just days earlier. Her voice now carried a careful professionalism, tinged with urgency. "Elena." She began dropping the Dr. Reyes formality she'd maintained during my exit interview. "I'm calling to discuss the situation with your patent. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding about ownership rights." "I don't think there's any misunderstanding," I replied calmly, watching Seattle's skyline from my new office window. "My employment agreement clearly states that intellectual property developed on my own time using my own resources remains mine. The patent documentation confirms exactly that. Jonathan was hoping you might consider coming in to discuss options. Any discussions would need to go through Meridian Systems' legal department now," I responded. "I'm sure they'd be happy to set up a meeting to discuss licensing terms." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finally, Pamela sighed. "I'll pass that along." That afternoon, I led my first formal presentation to Meridian Systems' board of directors, outlining our technology roadmap with my algorithm at its center. As I stood confidently at the head of the table, not hidden in the back, as I had been at TechVantage, I caught Marcus's approving nod. The board members, a diverse group including 3 women over 50, asked insightful questions about implementation timelines and competitive advantages. When I finished the board chair, a distinguished woman in her 60s named Victoria Cheng spoke directly. "Dr. Reyes, this is precisely the strategic vision we've been waiting for. Welcome to the leadership team." Later that day, a bouquet arrived at my office, elegant white orchids, with a note from my daughter Gabriella, who was finishing her PhD in bioengineering at Stanford. "Mom just saw the news. You're my hero today. And always love Gabby." The personal validation meant even more than the professional recognition. When Gabriella had been growing up, I'd often worked long hours, sometimes missing school events while pushing to advance in a field that constantly undervalued me. I'd worried that my struggles might discourage her from pursuing a technical career, but instead she'd embrace science with passion. Now perhaps she was seeing that persistence could eventually prevail. By Friday, just 1 week after I had walked out of Tech Vantage for the last time, the company had entered full crisis mode. Their stock had fallen 23% from Monday's opening bell, triggering concerned calls from major investors. Industry analysts were publishing speculative pieces with titles like "Can Tech Vantage Survive the Algorithm Crisis?" and "How One Strategic Blunder May Cost a Tech Giant Everything." Through my industry contacts, I learned that Jonathan had finally acknowledged the severity of the situation to the board Tech Vantage would need to either license my algorithm from Meridian Systems, likely at exorbitant rates that would devastate their profit margins, or undertake a complete rebuild of AccountSphere without using any technology covered by my patent. They've started interviewing for a new development team. Rajiv informed me during our Friday video call, where we discussed his upcoming transition to Meridian Systems. Jonathan's claiming they can recreate the functionality in 6 months. I couldn't help but laugh. The original algorithm had taken me 3 years to perfect, and that was with intimate knowledge of the problem space. Exactly. Rajiv agreed, his expression a mix of amusement and disbelief. Nobody's believing the timeline, especially after your team posted their resignation letters simultaneously. The knowledge drain is massive. That afternoon, Tech Vantage's attorneys finally reached out to Meridian Systems to open a dialogue about potential licensing arrangements. Our legal team, following the strategy we had developed, responded with terms that were technically fair, but strategically painful, 3 times the standard industry licensing rate, plus a public acknowledgement of my role as the technology's inventor. They'll balk at the acknowledgement more than the cost, Marcus predicted as we reviewed the response in his office. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the floor as we considered Tech Vantage's likely reaction. Jonathan's ego won't allow him to admit he pushed out the person who created their core technology. Then they'll have to rebuild, I replied, setting down the proposal document. And every day they spend trying to replicate my work is another day we extend our lead in the market. The following Monday morning, 10 days after my unceremonious dismissal, I led the first meeting with my newly assembled innovation team, which included Rajiv and the other 5 engineers from Tech Vantage. The energy in the room was electric as we mapped out the next evolution of my algorithm. "This is how development meetings should be," commented Zoe, running a hand through her short black hair. We spent half our time at Tech Vantage explaining basic concepts to executives who wouldn't listen anyway. That's the difference between being valued and being seen as replaceable, I replied, looking around at the engaged faces. Here your expertise is recognized. As we wrapped up the productive session, Layla appeared at the door. "Dr. Reyes, there's been a significant development with Tech Vantage. Their board just announced an emergency leadership change. Jonathan Blake is stepping down effective immediately." The news spread quickly. Within hours, industry publications were reporting that Tech Vantage's board had lost confidence in Jonathan's leadership, following the patent oversight that threatened the company's flagship product. Vanessa Wright was also out, along with the head of legal, who had failed to properly secure the patent. That evening, I received an unexpected email from Alexander Cooper Tech, Vantage's newly appointed interim CEO. From Cooper Alexander, to Reyes Elena. Subject: request for discussion. Dr. Reyes, congratulations on your new position. I've been brought in to help Tech Vantage navigate the current situation. I'd like to discuss a fair licensing arrangement for your patented technology. We're prepared to acknowledge your contributions publicly and make appropriate amends for the oversights of previous management. Would you be available to meet next week? Sincerely, Alexander Cooper, Interim CEO, TechVantage Inc. I forwarded the email to Marcus, adding a simple note. Phase 1 complete. His reply came quickly. Beautifully executed, the board is celebrating your first major victory for Meridian Systems. Looks like tech. Vantage is finally learning an expensive lesson about valuing innovation and innovators. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity as my new team at Meridian Systems immersed themselves in implementing my enhanced algorithm across our product suite. Rajiv, promoted to Director of Development, led the technical integration while I focused on strategic applications and future innovations. 1 month after my arrival, we completed negotiations with TechVantage. The final agreement required them to pay substantial licensing fees, publicly acknowledge me as the algorithm's inventor, and commit to proper attribution in all future marketing materials. In a press release that must have pained Alexander Cooper to approve, TechVantage announced, TechVantage acknowledges Dr. Elena Reyes as the original creator of the distributed processing algorithm that powers AccountSphere. We regret the oversight in proper attribution and have entered into a licensing agreement with Meridian Systems to continue utilizing this groundbreaking technology. The industry reaction was immediate. TechWire ran a feature titled, Reyes Recognition: How One Woman Reclaimed Her Intellectual Legacy, while Innovation Quarterly devoted its cover story to the algorithm that changed an industry and its creator. My email inbox filled with messages from women in technology, sharing their own stories of having ideas appropriated or contributions minimized. One senior developer at a major tech company wrote, I've been working on documenting my own innovations after reading about your experience. Thank you for showing us all that it's possible to reclaim our work. Another unexpected outcome was the surge of applications Meridian Systems received from female engineers and developers. When I mentioned this to Marcus during our weekly strategy meeting, he nodded thoughtfully. Our HR department says applications from women are up 70% since you joined. He confirmed, apparently your story has made us an employer of choice for women in tech. It's not just about me, I pointed out. It's about seeing a company that values intellectual contribution and proper recognition. That matters to everyone, but especially to those who've historically been overlooked. 2 months after my arrival at Meridian, we launched the first product, fully leveraging my enhanced algorithm, Mercury Finance, a cloud-native accounting system that processed complex calculations 60% faster than AccountSphere. The market response was overwhelmingly positive, with 3 major corporations announcing immediate plans to switch from TechVantage to Meridian. The speed difference is remarkable, commented the CTO of a Fortune 100 company during a client feedback session. But what impressed us even more was the architecture's elegance. Dr. Reyes, how did you conceptualize such an efficient approach? For the first time in my career, I was able to openly discuss my innovation process, explaining how I had identified fundamental inefficiencies in traditional processing methods and reimagined the entire architecture from first principles. The recognition was heady after years of having my ideas filtered through others. Gabriella flew in for the product launch celebration, beaming with pride, as she watched me address the assembled Meridian employees and industry analysts. After my speech, she embraced me tightly. Mom, you were amazing up there. So confident, so authoritative. She pulled back to look at me. You seem different, like you finally claiming your full self. That's exactly how it feels. I admitted, for years I made myself smaller, less threatening, more palatable. Now I don't have to buy. It looks good on you, she said with a smile. Really good. 3 months after my departure from Tech Vantage, I sat on the stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference, preparing to deliver the keynote address. The venue was filled with industry leaders, technology journalists, and aspiring developers, many of whom now knew my story. The previous year, I had attended this same conference as part of the Tech Vantage delegation, seated in the back while Jonathan gave a presentation about his company's innovations. And now I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker. The conference organizer announced her voice carrying across the hushed auditorium. Dr. Elena Reyes, Chief Innovation Officer at Meridian Systems, and creator of the distributed processing algorithm that has revolutionized data handling across multiple industries. The applause was substantial as I approached the podium, a stark contrast to the anonymity I had experienced for much of my career. I looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some new, all attentive. Thank you. I began my voice steady and confident. Today I want to talk about innovation ownership and the importance of properly valuing intellectual contributions, regardless of where or whom they come from. My presentation detailed the technical aspects of my algorithm, but also touched on the broader issues of recognition and respect in the technology sector. Without directly mentioning Tech Vantage, I emphasized the importance of companies protecting their innovators rather than seeing them as replaceable resources. Innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. I explained advancing to a slide showing the complex interconnections in my algorithm. It requires nurturing support and recognition. When we fail to acknowledge the human sources of technological advancement, we don't just risk losing valuable intellectual property. We risk losing the very minds that create our future. Afterward, during the reception, several young women engineers approached me, seeking advice and mentorship. One of them, barely 30, confided, "Your story changed how I document my work." I started keeping detailed logs of my development process on personal time. "Smart," I replied, truly pleased by this practical application of my experience. "Your innovations deserve protection." A young man with eager eyes and a nervous demeanor approached next. "Dr. Reyes, I'm starting a small development team, and I was wondering what policies would you recommend for intellectual property recognition? Credit all contributors by name in your documentation." I advised without hesitation. Make patent applications that include the actual inventors, not just the company. And remember that respect for innovation starts with respect for innovators. As the evening concluded, I checked my phone to find an industry news alert. Tech Vantage had finally announced the licensing agreement with Meridian Systems, acknowledging me by name as the algorithm's creator. Their stock had stabilized, though, at a significantly lower valuation than before my departure. Alexander Cooper had proven to be a practical leader, recognizing that Tech Vantage's survival depended on resolving the patent dispute quickly. The licensing terms we had ultimately agreed upon were fair but firmly in Meridian's favor. A substantial upfront payment, ongoing royalties, and the public recognition I had sought. As I scrolled through the announcement, I noticed a quote from Cooper that made me smile. "Tech Vantage is committed to recognizing the contributions of all innovators who make our products possible. We are implementing new policies to ensure proper attribution and protection of intellectual property moving forward." Late that night, after returning to my hotel room, I received an unexpected text from Gabriella, just finished defending my dissertation, Dr. Gabriela Reyes, is officially a thing. Couldn't have done it without your example of persistence. Love you, Mom. I felt tears spring to my eyes. Tears I hadn't allowed myself when facing Vanessa and Pamela in that sterile conference room 4 months earlier. This victory, watching my daughter follow her dreams in a field that had tried to exclude women like us, felt even more significant than my professional vindication. 6 months into my tenure at Meridian Systems, the transformation was complete. Mercury Finance had captured 18% of TechVantage's market share, with analysts predicting continued growth. My team had expanded to include 15 top engineers, with Rajiv and Zoe, both promoted to senior leadership positions. We had implemented a formal innovation recognition program that ensured all contributors received proper credit and compensation for their intellectual contributions. The industry had taken notice. 3 other major tech companies had announced similar attribution policies, acknowledging that recognizing innovators was good business. Practice, not just good ethics. A prominent tech industry association had invited me to chair their new committee on intellectual property rights and attribution standards. Meanwhile, TechVantage continued to struggle with the fallout from the algorithm crisis. Despite Alexander Cooper's competent leadership, the company had been forced to delay their next major release while rebuilding portions of their technology stack that had relied too heavily on my algorithm. Their market position had weakened considerably, though they remained a significant player in the industry. During a quarterly board meeting at Meridian Victoria Cheng, the board chair summarized the transformation succinctly. 6 months ago, we were playing catch-up to TechVantage. Today, we're setting the pace for the entire industry. Dr. Reyes has not only brought us groundbreaking technology, but has also transformed our innovation culture. After the meeting, Marcus and I shared a quiet moment in his office. "I've been meaning to ask you something," he said, pouring coffee for both of us. "Do you ever regret not getting the recognition at TechVantage? If they had properly credited you from the beginning, you might be in Jonathan's position now." I considered the question carefully. "No," I replied finally. At TechVantage, I would always have been fighting against a culture that fundamentally devalued what I brought to the table. Here I can actually change the culture. Well, you've certainly done that. Marcus observed, "Our retention rates are up. Innovation metrics have improved across all departments, and the quality of applicants has never been higher. That's what happens when people feel valued." I said simply. 1 year to the day after being told to clean out my desk, I sat in my spacious office at Meridian Systems, reviewing the quarterly innovation report. Under my leadership, the company had released 3 groundbreaking products built on my algorithm, capturing significant market share from TechVantage and other competitors. My team had expanded from the original 6 to 15 talented engineers with Rajiv, now serving as Director of Development. We had implemented a formal innovation recognition program that ensured all contributors received proper credit and compensation for their intellectual contributions. A knock at my door interrupted my analysis. Marcus entered holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Happy anniversary," he said, setting the glasses on my desk. "The board asked me to share the news with you personally before the public announcement. Meridian Systems has officially surpassed TechVantage in market valuation for the first time in company history." I smiled, feeling not triumph, but a quiet satisfaction. That's what happens when you value innovation properly, and when you hire the right people. Marcus added, pouring the champagne. Your team's work has transformed this company. As we clinked glasses, Layla delivered a sleek envelope. Inside was an invitation to speak at Women in Technology's annual leadership summit. The topic, owning your intellectual value, how proper documentation changed an industry. You've become something of an icon, you know. Marcus commented, noticing the invitation. The story about the executive who didn't recognize what he had until it was gone has become a cautionary tale in corporate boardrooms. Alexander Cooper had remained as TechVantage's CEO after successfully navigating the crisis. To his credit, he had implemented sweeping changes in how the company recognized and rewarded innovation. Their new policies on intellectual property protection and inventor recognition were reportedly modeled after the program I had established at Meridian Systems. It was never about revenge, I said, swirling the champagne in my glass. It was about recognition, about showing the industry that innovation isn't anonymous. It comes from real people who deserve real credit. To proper recognition, Marcus agreed, raising his glass. Later that afternoon, I led a video call with our newest client, a multinational corporation that had recently switched from TechVantage's AccountSphere to our Mercury Finance platform. Their CTO praised the system's performance, particularly highlighting the algorithm's efficiency. Dr. Reyes, the processing speed is remarkable. He said, "Our quarterly close used to take 3 days. Your system completed it in 7 hours. I'm glad to hear it's meeting your needs." I replied, noting how naturally the acknowledgement of my work now came from clients and colleagues alike. As the afternoon sun streamed through my office windows, I reflected on my journey. At 56, I had finally found what had eluded me throughout my career. Not just success, but acknowledgement. My name was now permanently attached to the algorithm that had changed an industry, exactly where it belonged. After the call ended, I opened my personal email to find a message from an unexpected source, Vanessa Wright. The subject line read simply, "Lessons learned." From Para? Right, Vanessa? To Elena Reyes. Object. Lessons learned. Elena, I've debated writing this email for months. Pride is a difficult thing to overcome. I want to acknowledge that I was wrong about you, about your value to TechVantage, and about how innovation should be recognized and protected. The changes Alexander has implemented here are transforming our culture, though too late to retain you and your remarkable team. I'm leaving tech. Next month is a career change long overdue. Before I go, I wanted you to know that your stand changed more than just your own trajectory. It opened eyes throughout the industry. Respect, Vanessa. I sat back surprised by the unexpected closure. This acknowledgement from someone who had been part of the system that devalued me felt significant, a sign that genuine change might be possible. That evening, as I drove home along Lake Washington, I thought about the next generation of innovators, people like Gabriella and Sophia, who might face fewer barriers because of battles fought by those who came before them. The next algorithm, the next breakthrough, might be properly attributed from the start because of precedents being set today. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone rang with a call from Marcus. I just got word that MIT's School of Engineering wants to endow a scholarship in your name. He said without preamble, the Elena Reyes Innovation Fellowship for women pursuing advanced degrees in computer science and engineering. I felt momentarily speechless. That's unexpected. Not really. Marcus replied. Icons deserve legacies, The board has approved matching the endowment. We're announcing it at next month's shareholder meeting. After ending the call, I stood in my garden watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My journey hadn't ended with reclaiming my algorithm. It had evolved into something larger, a chance to reshape how innovation was valued and protected. At 56, I wasn't just surviving in tech. I was thriving and helping to transform it. And for the first time in my career, I was doing so not from the shadows, but from the spotlight I had earned through decades of innovation, persistence, and finally recognition. The algorithm that had once been anonymously attributed to one of our research team members was now universally known as the Reyes algorithm, a name that would endure long after stock valuations and corporate rivalries were forgotten. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. Algorithmic justice.